Bitcoin is a spiritual revolution, and don't look at economic growth figures when you do Bitcoin, because the whole trick of doing economic growth is basically just, I throw a rock through your window and therefore economic growth, because you got to fix the window. Governments and corporations always go to war or go bankrupt at the end of the day. Bitcoin will never go to war. Bitcoin will never go bankrupt. Bitcoin will be around forever. What Bitcoin does is that it actively, explicitly promotes attention over sensation. So you can get out of the addiction world by just recognizing, I'm not going to buy the sensations anymore. I'm sick and tired of them. Ads will go when sensations are out, because ads are built only on sensations, nothing else, because they have no value. In the future, humanity will regard the abolition of advertising as an even greater achievement than the abolition of slavery.
Alexander, a warm welcome back to the Bitcoin Infinity Show. Great to have you here again.
I couldn't wait to get back. I'm here.
And once again, thank you so much for coming to our little event in Helsinki. And that was fantastic to have you there.
I was totally delighted. So what happened between the last time Knut and I met in this podcast and today was that we both met at the event in Helsinki at the end of the summer.
Yes, BTC HEL at the end of August. Luke and I were part of organizing that. Of course, Luke more than me, because he lives in Finland and has a more direct connection to that thing. So, and it was great seeing you in person. How did you find the event?
Well, I'm a philosopher and an anthropologist, so I'm interested in the Bitcoin cult. And I say the Bitcoin cult in the most friendly way possible here. So I'm interested in the sociological and anthropological aspects of Bitcoin and the sort of enthusiasm that Bitcoin generates. But of course, I'm most interested in the technology. I'm interested in capacities of currency. You and I probably agreed last time that we also call it virtual gold, because it's probably the best metaphor out there to describe what Bitcoin is. But of course, I'm also at heart a libertarian. I'm even a Marxist libertarian, to be honest about it. and as a Marxist libertarian, I can definitely say that I love the fact that any technology that enhances people's capacity towards this decentralization is welcome in my world. I think we fight the big powers, we fight the concentrated powers, we fight the syndicates and the cartels of the world. And we believe in free markets, and we believe in the free movement of people and their ideas. And the more we believe in that, the more we must believe in decentralization, where Bitcoin is a whole new paradigm, because you never had a technology that was designed in such a way that it actually enhances decentralization at all different stops and all.
Yeah, and a couple of more questions about the event and about your takeaways from it. Like, first, would you call yourself a Bitcoiner nowadays? Or would you call yourself a Bitcoin maximalist? I don't think that applies, right? But would you call yourself a Bitcoiner?
But not a maximalist. I'm kind of going to bed with Bitcoin, but I'm not married. Let's put it that way. I still see its enormous advantages compared to all the other technologies out there that are trying to get the glory right now. And I like the fact there's no corporation or government behind it. And that's why I'm in love with it. So I'm in love with Bitcoin. I'm dating Bitcoin. I'm fucking Bitcoin like crazy, but I'm not married.
So it's just like the rest of your relationships, basically.
It is in a way, yeah. But this one doesn't bitch and complain, because Bitcoin doesn't have a soul, thank God. It's a technology.
No, and we learned in Finland that gingers don't have souls from those fantastic T-shirts. Did you see those? Yeah.
I'm an honorary. I mean, I'm grayish now, sort of ginger gray, but I'm an honorary ginger Bitcoiner. So I'm definitely ginger for Bitcoin. I got the T-shirt and everything.
Yeah. Yes. That was fantastic. I mean, that was one of my favorite things about the whole conference. Check out their Twitter account, Gingers for Bitcoin. That's fantastic.
Especially if you're a ginger yourself. And what the fuck up ginger? Yeah, that's what you get.
Only a ginger can call another ginger, as who said that? Tim Minchin, the funny pianist from Australia. On the same topic, did you learn anything new about Bitcoin? Like what did you take away from the learning experience of going to the conference?
I don't think I learned anything new that I didn't already know about the technology itself. Although there's a lot of new applied technologies added to Bitcoin constantly. So you need to renew your knowledge for understanding the Bitcoin landscape, if you think of the technology. But since I'm more interested in anthropology of the whole thing, learning to know a lot of Bitcoiners was my great takeaway from the Helsinki event. And that's why I recommend people to go to these. They're deeply, deeply social events. And you probably will find your next favorite date at one of these events too. So, I mean, there are no girls, there are 6 Bitcoin girls. No, it's just, this is the way, including your wife. So So there we are. But I would highly recommend these events because I think the social aspect is incredibly interesting. For example, I'm a burner. I went to Burning Man for the first time 25 years ago. I've been going to burns around the world ever since. Yes, it's kind of hard to live with all the hippies around you, but at the end of the day, there's so many qualities you got to live with. And not all burners are hippies either. So I'm a burner at heart. I don't mind calling myself a burner the same way I call myself a Bitcoiner. I think these sort of international subcultures are the future of the world. I think the whole point with the internet is to find the others. And I think when you use Bitcoin as a find the others, it's a great start because you will find a lot of fascinating, interesting people who might even want to live with you and move to a new place somewhere on the planet and try to implement their ideas and see what new kind of lifestyles we could develop having Bitcoin as a platform. So I find that incredibly interesting.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about that and writing a lot about that because there's this notion that you have your layer one, right? That's the on-chain transactions. And you have your layer twos. It's your Lightning networks. It's your ARCs. It's all these technologies being built for mass adoption. But the layer zero is the really important layer. And that's the people, because Bitcoin is, of course, nothing without its people. And the thing I've been thinking about is that when you think about what owning a Bitcoin is, and this is going to be a bit of a rant here to set us off on a trajectory. So it's all information, right? And you cannot really own information. It's unownable. But what you can do is you can act as if you own it because you find it very improbable that other people have access to the same secret as you do. A private key is basically just a secret. The location of the private key is a secret. The 12 words is a secret. The actual private key is a secret. And you also find it very implausible that the system would ever change to allow for double spending of those coins. So it's very improbable that the network would all of a sudden all decide to have a consensus around we're going to increase the limit of the number of coins in circulation or the finite nature of the asset. And if you think deeply about this, like if all owning a Bitcoin is keeping a secret from someone else, then all the Bitcoins live within people's heads. That's the only place where information is where data is converted into information. Because
we can call it Gnostic gold.
Yeah. So information is just data interpreted by a human being. And if you think even more deeply about it, a miner is not a hangar full of ASICs. It's the guy deciding to buy the hangar and fill it with ASICs and run the code on the ASICs. A Bitcoin node is not a Raspberry Pi running software. It's a guy deciding to buy a Raspberry Pi and run the software. So it's not really backed by energy. It's backed by human action. It's backed by you and me. And this is, to me, that unlocks everything because that means that we are now part of the same not only species, but we're part of the same organism. You and I have the same economic cardiovascular system going here. We're part, what's good for me is good for Bitcoin. What's good for you is good for Bitcoin, which means that what's good for you is good for me. And which means if you extrapolate that thought vector, that's 8 billion people working for 8 billion people.
Well, you could turn it the other way around and think of the negation here. Wouldn't it be nice to join a subculture which is totally immune to controlling and manipulating individuals? Wouldn't that be nice? Because it's kind of hard if you're a sociopath and you really want to get into other people's heads and start to control them. It's really hard to do that once you go into Bitcoin environment. Is because the fiat currencies were based on the fact that, okay, to pretend that there are no criminals around, but pretend there's some guys called the Federal Reserve or Central Bank, and they behave exactly like a criminal gang, but they have the monopoly on being non-criminal. So we just decide basically that they're non-criminals and they can print their fiat currency as much as they like, and the rest of us are then forced to trade with that fiat currency and use it for exchange. But at the end of the day, they control everything. And the problem with the internet, with that model, is of course they will increasingly try to control our information. And this is where the word transparency comes in. The worst part of Western culture is the call to transparency. We inherited it from Christianity. It went through with Enlightenment. And it's still this idea that if something is exposed in the open for everybody to see, somehow that would be a good thing in itself. And what's interesting here is that Bitcoin is designed in such a way that you see the private and the sacred two things that are always fighting against transparency. Like I have a private life. I have private information. There are certain things that only I and my family know about each other, and the rest of the world shouldn't care because we're private people, right? And this kind of intimacy that's created because of privacy and sacredness, which is the opposite of the transparent and the prosaic. That's exactly what goes into Bitcoin. And here is where I might provoke some of the people in Bitcoin. And sometimes I tell them, I believe more in Bitcoin than you guys do, because you haven't really understood the full spiritual value of creating a platform like that for people to use. And now it's there. It's out in the open. And whatever happens next to Bitcoin, the genie is out of the bottle. It's undeniably there. And it might even be, for generous, it might even be the beginning of the opposite of letting the atomic bomb out as a genie out of the bottle, which we did in 1945. Meaning that maybe we just for once created something that has a fundamental value for all human beings, especially for the non-sociopaths.
I'm so glad that you took up that exact metaphor, because I held a talk in Riga 2 years ago called Oppenheimer versus Nakamoto. And the thesis is that the similarities between the two is that they both found a way to harness the power of physics to change human incentive structures. That's basically what both the atomic bomb and Bitcoin is. It's just that one is doing it through threats and war and murder, mass murder, and the other one is doing it by removing the profitability of violence. So one is a tool for peace. Some Oppenheimer fans and Oppenheimer himself would say that the atomic bomb is a tool for peace too. But, a Mexican standoff kind of peace is not really what we want here. We want people to be nice.
Power does have a few benefits. For example, when you're going to mine Bitcoin. But nuclear
power is not nuclear weapons.
True.
There's a difference.
But my point here is technologies per se are pharmaceuticals. Technologies per se are neither good nor evil. It's what we humans do with them. But certain technologies certainly make it a lot easier to be the nice guy. Certain technologies are designed in such a way that they embrace and enhance the capacity for human goodness. And I would definitely count Bitcoin among those designs. Although, sure, Bitcoin can be used for evil purposes.
I would say that Bitcoin is not a technology, but a social agreement. It's an agreement on a fixed set of rules. And the reason we agree on this specific set of rules is that these are the only rules that are more expensive to break than to follow, which gives people this incentive to be honest and act with integrity within this system.
Then it's both. It's a dialectic between a social agreement and a technology that enhances the social agreement.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's a language. Like it's a way of expressing what we value to one another through a number on the internet that cannot be copied.
Yep.
Basically. Yeah,
I agree totally.
Hello there, children. Have you ever thought about a $5 wrench attack or $15 wrench attack? What if someone were to hit you on the head and try to take your Bitcoin with this? Bitcoin transactions are irreversible, and if someone else gets access to your private keys, your money is gone. Bitvault is the first Bitcoin wallet that protects you from both physical and digital attacks. It upgrades security with multi-sig and time lock, which is a very interesting feature of Bitcoin. This means that transactions are locked for 2 hours to 15 days, giving you enough time to intervene and revert the transaction so the money goes back to you, even though the attacker thinks they got access to the money. So head to bitvault.sv to secure your lifetime subscription now. There are only 42 of those available for $199. Time is running out. Hello there. I often talk about how we are the Satoshis. The Bitcoiners are the Bitcoin network. In other words, the success of other Bitcoiners is the success of the Bitcoin network. And I've been secretly helping out working on a fantastic app for the last 3 years called Club Orange, formerly known as the Orange Pill app. This is a great way to get to know other Bitcoiners. You can get on the app easily. You can also get your own referral code to onboard other people. It comes at a cost, but that is to filter out spam and bots and people who ask you how your trade is going. This is not just a gay dating app. It's a fantastic way to find other Bitcoiners, find merchants, find events, to group chat, to video chat. There's a Bitcoin wallet inside that is the least KYC'd Bitcoin wallet in the world almost. And it's also a fantastic app overall for all of these things. So get on Club Orange right now and find other Bitcoiners near you. Yeah, we were on a panel in Helsinki where there was who were there too. Like Grafton from Vexel was there, and Vexel is one of my favorite projects. And there was someone from Noster. I can't recall who that was. This is embarrassing. But there was someone talking about Noster. Derek Ross, I think. Yeah.
Yes,
Derek was there too. And who was there?
From America to Helsinki to do the panel. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And he was in Riga last year for the Nost Riga. There was a big Noster conference in Riga last year, just before the Baltic Honey Badger Bitcoin conference there. So what do you think about those technologies, Vexel and Noster? Now, hopefully that you know a bit more about them after the conference.
The thing is that if you do decentralized social media, for example, the problem is you've got to make it slightly clumsier and less fancy than the commercial variants. But as soon as the commercial variants start to misuse their power, and I give you a perfect example. I've been a big fan of YouTube ever since YouTube got started. And I thought YouTube actually was better off after Google bought it and threw even more money at it and invested in it. But I've got so many friends that are taken off YouTube for absolutely no reasons at all, and have no way of going to court or getting back on YouTube whatsoever, that I'm getting really, really tired of YouTube. And this is what happens when these social media technologies that are really fancy, that have tons of money behind them, they're really invested in looking savvy and making everything comfortable for you. So when you use these technologies, you would stay with them and stay loyal with them. The problem, though, is that when suddenly you and your friends start dropping off, and your friends are banned, and you don't even know why, your friend doesn't even know why, you get sick of it because the misuse of power. And this is the problem with the tech giants. Tech giants are constantly falling into the same trap. Facebook or Meta, whatever it's called now, is worse. It's even worse than the others. It's been bad all along. But basically all of these guys are so nervous of politicians in Brussels and Washington, and they have their own weird, strange agendas. I mean, woke ideology permeated tech companies in California for 50. It was terrible. And the problem is, we have to remember this, that even if these decentralized social media don't look as fancy when you start using them, at the end of the day, they will keep you free and independent. And it's precisely when YouTube turns you off, you suddenly discover that maybe I should have picked another platform. It would be clumsier, would have been as easy, but I would still have owned everything. I would still have access to everything. I would still have my audience available to me that I could talk to. So I think this is what we need to remember, that all these attempts over the last 30 years to create a Web 0.3, whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to call it, like in more social media direct, like you and I create genuine social media, authentic social media, whenever we try to do that, we have to remember that at the end of the day, we're going to have to go that path. Undeniably so.
Yeah, I agree.
This is when Noster comes in. Noster works.
Yeah.
Then it's your own thing. But you have to take responsibility for designing your own social media. That's what you do when you use Noster platform. That's what I highly recommend it. But if you can do that, do it. If you have the time to do it, do it. If you're young, do. Because especially if you're young, you have a long life ahead of you, and you will be thrown off YouTube, Instagram, everything else sooner or later if you speak your mind. You'll be absolutely guaranteed of that. And then they're going to steal all your information and take it with you because you uploaded it and you didn't store it anywhere. I mean, don't make that mistake. That is why you and I are such failures in decentralized platforms.
Absolutely. And the saps you receive today on Noster, if you're children, then those are going to buy you a car at some day because of number go up technology in Bitcoin, right? So it's profitable too.
That was the cynical argument for joining decentralized media. I did not say that. You said.
Yeah. Well, is it cynical? Isn't it optimistic? I would call it optimistic.
Okay. I'm more of an idealist. I believe in freedom and liberty, and I believe in long-term freedom and long-term liberty. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, but that's why I believe in
that. You have to build yourself, because nobody's going to offer it to you. Because if they offer you all the freedom and the liberty they said they're going to offer to you, the day they get nervous about whatever you're posting, they're just going to turn you off, and there's going to be nowhere for you to go to protest.
So how much of that is due to, because this is my belief, so I want to ask you about it. I believe that most of that, and the whole woke movement really, is due to political interventionism. It's politics meddling with the free market. And a lot of that has to do with the simple fact that we have inflationary money in the first place, because what that is, it's just a big mechanism for funneling wealth from individuals to collectivist authoritarian figures.
I think that's part of the problem, but I think another problem is that we have to look at what ideology actually is. Listen, I'm working on my 7th book with young Sedicus at the moment, and I think one of the things you got to argue in the book is that the social sciences never existed. They never were any social sciences. The problem is, and this is the problem with the coasts in America and with Western Europe, is that we've gone secular, or at least we pretend we've gone secular. We lost our interest in religion. The problem with that is that we replaced it with political ideology. So political ideology took that place because there's so many people out there who, instead of working on themselves and doing their own business, want to interfere with other people's businesses and what other people are doing. And what starts out as innocent gossip about your neighbors ends up as preaching to your neighbors how they must live their lives and how they must change their lives. This is what I call the Greta Thunberg mentality. I can say that because I know the Greta Thunberg family. I'm from Sweden myself, and I'm disgusted with what they're doing. So I think that kind of moralism is horrible. I have never, ever in my life tried to change another human being. My 90-year-old mom says it's the best quality her son has, is that I've never, ever tried to change another human being. I think human beings can change themselves if they want to, and I'm not interested in trying to change anybody. So if I take that stance, if I start with that philosophical stance, then I'm not going to try to change anybody, but I'm going to make a descriptive philosophy, try to explain how the world works because I have enough time, enough energy and talent to actually try to understand how the world works. Then I'm going to be a good philosopher. That's what philosophy should do to people, to the reader, out of respect to the reader. So I think we need to start there and start discussing where ideology comes into the picture. I think these huge tech companies in Silicon Valley, they were built by guys who could crunch the numbers, the zeros and the ones. They maybe had an engineering or a programming degree. They had very few social skills to begin with. And these guys, with a domination of an Asperger syndrome, not the Asperger syndrome, which is kind of nice to have in a crowd, but rather the dominant version where everybody's got in the room. When you have that, you got what I call today Silicon Valley Stalinism. Silicon Valley Stalinism is that the tech company decide over everything important in your life and you can't do anything about it. And it's Stalinism because you have nowhere to go in case they decide to ban you. Even if you don't understand why you're being banned, there's no email you can send to Mark Zuckerberg to ask him, why did you ban me? There's no customer service anymore. Not even that. That's Stalinism. That's pure Stalinism. And I think the reason we got to this point is because these companies started employing people 20, 30 years ago to handle all the politics around them. And these people were ideologues, demagogues. They came out of the social sciences. They didn't come from Stanford any longer. They came from Berkeley. So suddenly they started walking in through the doors. And I saw this happening 20 years ago at Google. These companies suddenly these guys started walking through the doors, moralistic, high-minded, thought they were higher than thou. And they thought they were higher than the programmers and higher than the coders and higher than the engineers of these companies too. And these guys with their protocols took over these companies. And in the 2010s, it was absolute misery. The problem's still there. It's gotten better, thanks to Donald Trump, to be honest, but it's still there. The problem's still there. So ideology fills precisely the space between making money out of the investment and the technology in the hands of the customer.
Yeah. So this live and let live attitude and these effects you're talking about, this is why I'm a libertarian. This is one of the reasons. But I don't want people, I want to be left alone. So I want to leave other people alone. I don't want to interfere with them in any way, shape, or form. I'm just saying, the reason that these companies have been able to grow so enormously big has to do with access to cheaper loans and, closer to the monetary spigot, and also pumping their stocks because the stock market is on steroids because it's not accurately reflecting the value of the company since we have a money printer running in the background. The money we're measuring the value of all these companies in is losing, is diminishing continuously.
So absolutely. That's why we have this AI super hype at the moment. We're sitting here talking early October 2025. It's not even controversial. It's still the hype's there because everybody's on the bandwagon. Nobody's jumping off the bandwagon because they think somebody else is even more stupid than they are to stay on the bandwagon even longer. That's how these bubbles work. This could be a bubble way worse than 1999. And the reason I became a philosopher and the reason I broke the market like America with the Netocrats, our first book 25 years ago, was because the book prophesied and said the dot-com bubble would burst. That was the easiest thing in the world to say in 1999. I'd say the same thing now. These overvaluations of AI stock at the moment are hysterical. And this is precisely because the money is cheap. It's being pumped in there because the payoff from the money anywhere else is apparently small. So that's a pumped up market, and there's a huge inflationary pressure beneath it. And I think if you combine this with Donald Trump's trade tariffs, by 2026, we're going to have major problems in the North American economy. Major problems coming out of this clash between these two. Overvaluation of stock, all energy, all money being soaked into the AI hype at the same time as America is raising trade tariffs against the rest of the world. This combination is lethal. I think we're seeing right now, late September, a few days ago, we saw peak Trump. I think the first instances against Trump were Jimmy Kimmel is back on air through Disney, and Pritzker is fighting back Trump in Chicago, meaning Pritzker really wants to be the president in 2028 for the Democrats, which wouldn't be that bad idea. They should pick a Jewish billionaire this. It'd be much better than Santa Claus. But America will be fine 10 years from now, but America will have a couple of disastrous years ahead precisely because of these two hypes. And here's the funny thing. When the dollar crisis hits big time, the dollar has only fallen by 15, 20% by now, but it's going to fall a lot further if this goes on the way it is right now. If the dollar starts falling rapidly, this will be the big chance of Bitcoin to really move in and become way more important than this.
Yeah, the problem with American inflation is that they can export it to other countries, like especially now with the whole new in the Genius Act, there's a paragraph about stable coins and how stable coins can now be connected to U.S. Treasuries somehow. I don't know the...
There was the S word. We're going to go back to that. I was just waiting for the stablecoin word to be dropped in this conversation. Finish it off.
First of all, they're not stable. And second of all, it's not a coin.
We can go to that later. Yeah, we can explain. Explain it non-linearly. Just look on where it was and go on.
Yeah, I think the stable coin is really just, it is perpetuating the dollar system and keeping if you're in Argentina or Venezuela or Turkey or something where there's really bad inflation, you want to use the dollar. And here's a way to use what you really should use is Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is deflationary, of course, and you would make you would be able to actually save, but they don't crave that because they don't know what it is and they're scared about it. So instead, they want a digital dollar, and that is the stable coin. And that can easily be, at some point, just taken over by the US government and turned into a CBDC. And that's a scary scenario, in my opinion. What do you think about stable coins and CBDCs?
Well, I think we have to understand that you and I were right last time, because the US dollar has fallen with 10 to 15% against a basket of other fiat currencies, which is not like it's fallen compared to something really strong and valuable. It's fallen against a sort of very mediocre basket of other currencies. And it's fallen rapidly this year. People feel very insecure about Trump and the trade tariffs and what's going on in America. And they're thinking maybe America is just losing its soft power that it had completely and is not interested in keeping it longer. They're getting out of Europe. They're getting out of Asia. What the hell the Americans are up to is looking more and more like they're going to go to war with Venezuela and Cuba or something. We're going towards that direction right now. And if that is going to happen in America, the dollar will lose its central role as the currency of the world. And that means we go towards multipolar instead of unipolar, specifically when it comes to currencies. And ultimately, whether the world is unipolar or multipolar depends on if we have one currency that dominates 90% of the world trade, which the US dollar did in its peak, or whether it's just going to be one currency among many others. And as things are going right now, with America's totally disinterested in keeping the dollar value, in obviously publicly printing more money to lower the value of the dollar, and obviously even taking away rents on dollar papers. I mean, the next idea from the Americans right now, if you do have government paper or government bonds in America invested in the US dollar, you're not going to get any rent back from it, although it's inflationary. But these are idiotic ideas. They're really testing. They're really testing to see if they can kill the dollar. A lot of these things like going on are in that direction. So the dollar has already fallen to. That means that people are at least moving to other currencies to begin with. And once they don't trust US dollar anymore, why would they trust any fiat currency? And then next they're on to, do they have to deal with central bank issued crypto, or can they go for Bitcoin, which doesn't have a master?
Yep. Fun fact. $21 million were printed per Bitcoin mined in 2021. How poetic is that number? So like the dollar has to inflate faster and faster. There's no way out of that. That's the only tool in the Fed's toolbox is to print more money. And it's this perpetual thing where there's not enough money in circulation, and the only way to conjure up new money is to make a bank loan out of thin air, and then that has to be paid back with interest, which all currencies are on the same hockey stick trajectory. They will all hyperinflate and die at some point. It's just like, what does the transition to the next system look like? And in the past, when a currency hyperinflates, there's a conversion to another currency and a lot of civil unrest in between. Civil unrest at best, and it's straight up wars at worst. And but you're claiming that we'll have multiple currencies competing. The way I see it,
that's the first step. The first step is to get away from the dollar domination. And
but money is
voted to that idea to get rid of the domination to begin with. It's like they want to get rid of their own power. That's what they do.
Yeah, but this short-term thinking is the same as tariffs.
Well, I think the way it works for most people is that at the end of the day, dollar fiat currencies are printed on paper because paper money is a 17th century technology, right?
Yeah.
We don't do Bitcoin. We don't print it on paper, right?
We can.
But we don't want to. We don't need to because we're part of the future. So let's just go back a bit and look at how this is going to develop. That means they want us all to move to the cards, the Visas and the MasterCards of the world, and a few other sort of digital payment systems which they can control. And they want us to move there, and then they want to make sure the dollar, the euro, the other fiat currencies have a monopoly or an oligopoly of these cards. The question is only which one of the card companies or mobile payment systems is the first to say, listen, we're going to complement the dollar and the euro with Bitcoin because a lot of our customers want to use Bitcoin instead. They feel more reliable, especially if they're going to store value for a longer period of time in a currency. They definitely want Bitcoin. If they're going to buy stock or buy ARC or buy something else, fine. But if they're going to keep a currency for a long period of time, they certainly want a bank account with Bitcoin attached to it. But once that happens, it will go really rapidly because most people, they just pick a card. They pay with their card. They don't even know the card is tied to currency. They get an irritating question. You want to pay the local currency? You want to pay the global currency? You want to pay the currency of your card? And they're like, I don't know. I probably pay the local currency because they probably take less money away from me if I push that button, right? That's all you do when you use a credit card. And at the end of the day, the big struggle is going to be on the credit card. It's going to be on even if the credit card it's a digital wallet, it doesn't really matter. It's going to be there. And we can just sit back, let the genius out of the bottle and wait. Because all the other alternatives have either a government or a corporation behind them. And governments and corporations always go to war or go bankrupt at the end of the day. Bitcoin will never go to war. Bitcoin will never go bankrupt. Bitcoin will be around forever. That's why this technology is so amazing.
Yeah, but the thing I have a problem with that logic is that, first of all, Bitcoin on a credit card is not Bitcoin. Like paper Bitcoin is not Bitcoin. If someone else is holding your keys, it's not really yours. So all the permissionless nature, all the benefits of it are just gone. It's just like the ETFs or the treasury
credit card or any digital payment system. Thinking credit card.
Okay.
I don't mean literal credit card. I just mean that. The tool I'm using at the moment of transaction, when I transfer money between you or pay for something or get paid for something, eventually at the end of the day, that digital flow today is controlled by the central banks and they hold on to it knowing that Bitcoin is superior.
Yeah. And I mean, there are cards and rings and whatnot, all sorts of other objects with NFC chips in them where you can send Bitcoin with just you blip it just like you would blip your card. So that technology is already there. The thing I have a problem with is like, what's the incentive for banks and governments to ever allow something like that to happen? They're the ones who are making money off of the old system, or at least they think they are. They too would be better off. It's sort of like the Soviet Union, even the richest people.
Versailles had no incentive to be in the streets of Paris in 1789. The old power never has an incentive to let the new paradigm go through. That's exactly what gets bloody and messy paradigm shifts historically. So the bankers are in Versailles, the politicians are in Versailles, the very people invested in the old systems are sitting in Versailles. They hate Bitcoin, they will hate it even more when they see its full power in glory. Let's put it that way. Bitcoin is, fortunately enough, not alone. There'll be a lot of different technologies that work towards decentralization, except that Bitcoin was the first, the dominant one, constantly being developed. There's a very good chance of dominating that whole scene over the next 50 to 100 years. So we'll see potentially where the problems will occur eventually along the way, because we have to deal with things like criminality and things like that. We don't want an anarchy, and that's where the problems come eventually. But not that fiat currencies made that much of a difference. But anyway, these guys do not have any incentive to let this through. It's you and me. It's the customer. It's the employer. It's the employee.
Yeah, but we don't have the incentive to be the customer of the bank anymore. What I'm doing, and what many other Bitcoiners that I know are doing, is that they're trying to keep as little money as possible in bank accounts for several reasons. But the main ones being they don't trust the bank and they don't trust the government. Basically, a bank account is a 2 out of 3 multi-sig deal between you, the bank, and the government.
Well, nobody should have a bank account to begin with, because if you got cash, invested in something, so you can have something that pays off. And I mean, that's why I'm saying that invest in stock in companies, and companies that grow and pay back. And have a profit. That's the point in having money. If you're sitting with money on a bank account, you're either a very old Japanese lady, or you're actually sitting on a Bitcoin account. It'll be either of those.
But if you're, if you own stock in a company, you're still in the clutches of the bank, because they are handling all of that for you. Now, sure, there's the whole legal system and that's stuff. But like, Bitcoin is still the only thing where you are actually 100% in charge of your keys and your access. You can verify that the Bitcoin you received were actually real Bitcoins, and you can permissionlessly spend it. There's like no middleman there. So I think there's
companies don't have to go to the banks to get investments. They can go to you.
And I think a company in the future does not have to be a legal entity. It can just be a group on Telegram or in Nostr, some Nostr equivalent of Telegram. Like it can just be a group of people. You can just do things, as the Joker said in Dark Knight. Like, we can totally do that now. You and I can start a company tomorrow without telling any state, and just do stuff together. And the beauty of that is and how liberating it is. I think we only barely scratched the surface of that.
What happens if you or I break the contract, though? I'm the devil's advocate here.
Yeah.
It's the question. What happens if I live on the Riviera in France and I'm wealthy and I've invested some of my money in Bitcoin because it seemed like a good investment, and suddenly the hijackers come around, take my kids, put a gun to my head and say that he took my laptop and into my Bitcoin account. What happens? What happens when we do? I mean, let's be honest here. What happens when we do approach anarchy? How do we deal with that? Because the nation state system, although it doesn't defend us and all that, at least it's pretending it's doing. It's called the police force, right? You go to the police, you report a crime, and you take people to court and things like that. So how do we have those kind of social contracts where actually there's an effect if somebody breaks the contract?
Well, this was actually a thing I'm glad you asked, because I've written a chapter of that in the updated version of Praxeology, a chapter on natural law and punishment, one on natural law and one on punishment. And there have been historical periods where private law firms actually solve conflicts instead of having it by decree of the king or by decree of the government. So the very notion that law has to be a public good is, in my opinion, wrong. And it's like everything else in the public sector. It wastes resources, like enormous resources. Because if someone steals my car and smashes it somewhere, then I lost a car and that guy gets thrown into jail. Imprisoning someone in Sweden today costs around like 1,000 euros per day or something. So if he's in prison for 2 weeks, I can buy a new car if it's a Bitcoin car, like a crappy Toyota. Like if it's in prison for 50 days, he can. That's more like a normal family car today. Well, what I'm saying is the bureaucracy around the prison is you're making everyone in society also a crime victim by socializing law and policing. So I would say in a perfect society that cannot exist, but I think this is the trajectory to strive for, is that we solve more and more conflict and legal conflict, especially just a dispute, a legal dispute between two owners of a company or something, that we solve that privately, and we decide before we enter the contract that this is the person that we trust as a third party to resolve our conflict.
Well, that's how you do with most international trade contracts today anyway. So that's been going on for quite a while.
Yeah, but they're also subject to actual laws.
Compensation for breaking the contract is strictly financial, that would work. At the end of the day, though, if you're looking, for example, at Prospera, I'm a huge fan of Prospera. I got rid of the guy on the works there. If you look at Prospera on the island of Roatan outside Honduras, which is more and more admitting that is becoming more like an idea of a Singapore or Dubai, but for Central America, just to keep the hype down a bit and actually say something they can sell to politicians in that part of the world. And it's probably true. But what they've done is that when it comes to physical crimes that have a direct effect on your body, for example, like killing somebody, raping somebody, whatever, there's still Honduran law. And they rather than enhance the Honduran government to take care of that. But when it comes to trade conflict, anything that involves your finances or economics, you basically just sign up with the Prospera jurisdiction. You're not part of the Honduran law system at all. And therefore, you can do exactly what you do. So you can at least gradually move legalization of law. You can gradually move the whole law area over to the kind of model you were talking.
Yes, and
see how far you can take it.
That's what I'm hoping for, and that's what I think we'll see more and more of. I'm an ambassador for the Free Cities Association, which Prospera is a part of. And Prospera is wonderful, and the way they handle that is wonderful. We should strive to in that direction with all of our societies, and these small little circular economies where you have more Bitcoin adoption. So in Europe, that will be Madeira or Prague, to name two. Much more of this is actually already playing out. And Prague, it has played out historically before, like the whole Velvet Revolution thing. The name Vexel comes from the currency, the black market currency they used when the communists were trying to control everything before the wonderful second defenestration thing. And so they resolved all the conflicts, and so they did everything private, but without ever telling the government anything.
And, we should add the word Bohemian means Czech.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bohemia is the old German name for the Czech.
Yeah.
Like,
yes. Czech. Anyway.
Oh.
Yeah.
Then is there anything else you want to add to that question, what we do with the anarchy and things like that? Because Bitcoin is...
No. I'm interested.
The Bitcoin isn't completely closed. And that's one of the great things about the Bitcoin design, because I think that completely closed systems, completely closed designs have the problem they do enhance anarchy and criminality on a large scale. And the great thing with Bitcoin is that it looks like the good guy when it comes to that department, when it comes to technology itself. So, but we have to address the problem, how to answer that question. And of course, we could always just answer, well, hey, Bitcoin's here. Genius out of the bottle. Anybody in the world can get Bitcoin if they want to. They might be late to jump on the bandwagon as things are now. It's
no such thing.
Just don't worry. Bitcoin long-term will probably work really well. So we can always have it there and say, okay, so let's see if the fiat currencies can compete or not. And then we see who picks up the Bitcoin and says that, oh, for me, this technology or this design works better than the alternatives. Or for me or my customers and my relationship to my customers, this earns much more credibility long-term than any other relationship that involves a US dollar or a euro, whatever, where there's a third party involved that I can't control. And the more the old system, the more the governments, the more the Washingtons and Brussels of the world try to control these mechanisms, try to control these technologies, and implement all kinds of wild and crazy legalization on top of it, although not understanding how it works, not understanding its benefits, just to defend the old system and defend the old paradigm and nothing else. The more they do that, the faster the switch over to Bitcoin and similar technologies will be.
Gloves up. We know of a knockout Bitcoin wallet. It's the Bitbox 02 Nova Edition, and you can get it at bitbox.swiss. This little thingy has the latest security chip, and you can plug it straight into your iPhone, and it's an overall awesome device. The software interface is super smooth, and it's a very secure hardware wallet. They're one of the oldest hardware wallets in the business. So go to bitbox.swiss/infinity and check out the new Nova edition of the Bitbox right now. Code Infinity gets you a discount. And if you go to bitbox.swiss/infinity, you will automatically get that discount. So there. $15 wrench attacks are one thing, but what if you die? You need some inheritance planning. We have some very wonderful Aussie friends that can take care of that for you. They're called the Bitcoin Advisor. You find them at the Bitcoin Advisor with an ER, not an OR at the end, .com. And they can secure your Bitcoins for generations for a very low fee. So go to bitcoinadvisor.com and check out their inheritance planning stuff right now. You were on to something before about you never wanted to control others. I think we have this in common, like the live and let live mentality. And then you said you were...
I have no desire to change another human being at all.
This is why I'm a libertarian, but you said you're a libertarian Marxist. I'm curious about the Marxist part. How do you square that? I told you this before.
I'm reading Oswald Spengler at the moment. A lot of kids out there reading Spengler, and Spengler 40 years ago, I'm back to Spengler again, as it's read when I was young. But Spengler is probably the only guy who understood that the really smart way of doing political philosophy would be to unite Nietzsche and Marx and look at both at the same time. The problem with Nietzsche being that he's very much an existentialist. It's very much about him. So he talks directly to you. It's about him and you when you read Nietzsche and you study his thinking. But he's very much the last individualist. He's the last guy who tries to get free from all the oppression of Christianity and whatever Europe had, thrown at him, and then try to understand it fully and sort of dialectically get over it and move on to some kind of new autonomy and the freedom of establishing your own values in the fundamental sense. Nietzsche did that, but he did it very much on his own. It's like one of my friends said once who read Nietzsche, said, yeah, great guy, but why doesn't he have a best buddy? Why doesn't have a best buddy? I mean, what's life without a best buddy? Of course you won't have a best buddy, you won't have a best friend, right? And there's not a word in Nietzsche's work about a best buddy anywhere. And that's why I said we still need to read Karl Marx, because Karl Marx actually operates in the world of what do people do collectively when they do something beautiful together. And here's the thing. Marx is incredibly misunderstood and incredibly misinterpreted. The number one thing you must do is to not start with the Communist Manifesto, because the Communist Manifesto was written by Engels, signed by Marx, which he has responsibility for, but not a single word from Karl Marx in that entire book. So once you start looking at the bigger work of Marx and his attempts in the 1830s, 1840s to try to understand the complexity of industrial society, he tried to look at the more timeless aspects of what it means to be human. He tried to look at what was specific in the society he lived in. And I tell you what, the factories of Europe in the 1830s and 1840s are pretty dirty, miserable.
Of course.
I mean, there was no difference between work and slavery yet. Basically, the difference was that if you were a slave, somebody paid for you 24 hours a day. And if you were at work, somebody paid for you 8 hours a day, but treated you even worse. So
yeah, but it's still a better alternative than starvation.
Wrote the books. But to understand class analysis, I think it's very, very important. So when you move on to my work that I've done with John, the Netocrats came out 25 years ago. And in that book, we lay out a digital age class society history. We're saying that's not going to be a revolution. We're not going to get over. We're not going to go towards society where classes don't exist because it's just fucking Rousseau. Skip that part of Karl Marx. Take the analysis with you. Take the method with you to try to understand power. So when I'm critical of fiat currencies, when I'm critical of central banks, I'm a Marxist. When I see the enormous power that Bitcoin could liberate in people, especially people like you and me who don't want to change others, who allow people to make up their own minds about things, and therefore we can have really healthy, authentic relationships with them. We can have customer relations. We can have employer-employee relations that are actually healthy and authentic. If we can have those things because Bitcoin helps us go in that direction, that's Marxist thinking.
Yeah, but Marx also said the central bank was the most important institution for the revolution to happen at all. Like the control of money was the...
Then.
Yeah, later on. Later on in his works.
Exactly. But he wouldn't say so today. I mean, the fair way of reading Karl Marx is not to read him as if he wrote in 2025. You have to read him as if he did write in the 1830s and 1840s. Knowing what he knew then. And this is before Darwin, this is before Nietzsche, this is before Freud. We have all those other great thinkers that come afterwards. So when I'm saying that I'm a Marxian or proto-Marxist or whatever, I'm saying that I've read Karl Marx to understand what he could tell us about today's society. And in that sense, Bitcoin is a revolution. It's a typical example of Marx's definition of a revolution. And I think from now on, revolutions are fundamentally technological.
Wasn't his definition more violent? Like, didn't Marx's version of a revolution require the overthrowing of the government, implying violence? It does have to imply violence. It just means the old government has to go. You
You are a Marxist revolutionary. He said, I want to kill the dollar, I want to kill the euro, I want Bitcoin to win.
Yeah, but I don't want to forcefully kill it. I want to provide the world with a better alternative. Like,
Good.
I want to promote a better alternative. I want the voluntary part is the absolute most crucial, which is why
I don't think voluntarism was even a choice in the 1830s. This is before 1848, where finally people started realizing going out of the streets and demonstrating could have an effect on power.
I would say it was even more prevalent, in a way, because when you lived on the countryside and you had a farm, sure, you could have bad luck and then the king would come and draft you somewhere and you were fucked. But for most people, they were on their own, in solitude, doing their own family, doing their own shit, right? And nobody meddling with their lives. It's a different, and the progress that has been made since, it's all because of the free market. It's all because of people voluntarily interacting with one another. And politics is just we prosper despite democratic government, not because of them. Like, would you agree with that?
I would agree that a minimal set of rules that must be followed is what creates a civilization. And that's why I'm for the state. I'm for borders, I'm for the nation, but I want to minimize it.
How do you minimize it?
I call myself a liberal nationalist or a libertarian nationalist.
But how come it never stays? Because this is the Rothbardian argument that a minimal state is just as much a utopia as a no-state society. Because they are cancers. They cannot stay minimal. They will always grow. Once in place, if you outsource the monopoly of violence to a central institution, there is no way of keeping them in check. So they will grow, and they will grow
as long as you feed them, and that's called tax.
Yes, and inflation, which is
paying higher and higher taxes, they will indeed grow. And Michel Foucault pointed it out. He said that Foucault famously said that once you start an institution, you must understand you just created a hydra. That means that the institution will never ever tell you it's going to go away. No. All it will ever do is that it will try to come up with reasons to keep itself alive for as long as possible and to expand. That's the problem with creating institutions as answers to problems. You should never do that.
Which is why we cannot unscrew the corks of plastic bottles in the EU anymore.
Yeah, no. No matter how irritating that is, it's not the end of the world. There are far worse problems.
No, but it's an example of them coming up with reasons to exist.
I'd say this. What's interesting right now is that we're moving towards what I call a sociocracy, and I think it's unavoidable. My best friends in America, Tristan Harris and Asa Raskin, at the Center for Humane Technology, agree with me on this one. They said that in a way, we must assume the police state is partly at least unavoidable. There will be cameras with microphones recording everything everywhere. This is called a sociocracy. A word of sensors attached to our senses. It's called sociocracy. Sociocracy beats the shit out of what we call democracy, because why would you go every 4 years and put somebody's name that you're not even a relationship with into a box where you actually vote every damn second of your life? Because your behavior is your voting mechanism. Now, if your behavior is your voting mechanism, we can pretty much figure out with an AI what people really want and what they don't want. We can pretty much figure it out quite easily and completely within 10 years. That won't be a problem at all. The problem, though, is that who sits and controls that information that makes the decision, so who formally, even if it's just constitutively, has the power in that system. That means sociocracy is unavoidable. That means if somebody's come up with an idea where the sociocracy becomes absolutely totalitarian, that's the fantasy currently of communists, China. So somebody's already figured out sociocracy is the future. We're going to do a version of it. Let's do the Confucian. Let's control absolutely everybody and leave people with a minimal amount of freedom, which basically regards things we don't care about anyway. But anything that absolutely influences or has an effect on our power will be banned instantly. People get killed or whatever if they break those rules. So you have that system installed already, and it's becoming madness in communism. The response to that is an impossibility, and that's why I like it philosophically. It's to imagine a free and open sociocracy. What would it mean to have a state system where you have cameras and you have microphones everywhere? And if you have the cameras and the microphones everywhere, it'd still be free and open. Well, the number one rule is the cameras and the microphones must be turned towards those who rather than us. That's the number one principle. And I think it's the only principle we can basically put out that says this could open it all up for a free and open sociocracy, because you have to start imagining what that would be like. That also means today's politics is dead. We come to a point of politics becoming ironic. And this is dangerous because that means politics cannot create any value whatsoever for us anymore. It can only destroy value. That's exactly what politicians are doing today. They're not creating any value for us if they ever did. They're certainly not creating any value for us any longer as citizens. They're only destroying value for us. That means that sort of political system we have today is doomed. And we know it. And that's why we elect clowns as presidents. The Netocrats, Chapter 6, said in the year 2000 that within a few years, America will elect a reality TV show star as its president, as a declamation that now politics has officially become ironic. That's exactly what happened in 2016. And again in 2020. So, politics for me is over the way universities are over. I don't recommend anybody to go into the academic career any longer. It's a dead end. Everything you have online today beats academics, beat the shit out of it. Why wouldn't everything you have online today beat the shit out of politics? That means we're killing the old paradigm. We're killing the old fundamental institutions. We're killing industry, getting up in new tech startups and AI and new ways of doing tech startups. You could literally create a person, single employed, could create a person worth $1 billion today if you want to. Or even better, let's nice some in Bitcoin, right? You could do that today. Industry is over. Academia is over. That also means politics is over. And the only way you could solve it gracefully for the politicians is basically to offer them something very Swedish, which I call constitutional democracy. We pretend we're voting every 4 years. Vote for the funniest, quirkiest people. We put cameras in the parliament, and they have a fucking reality TV show, and they claw the eyes out of each other, but they have no influence in our lives.
So Greta will be president one day then?
Of course, she's lazy, by the way. She doesn't read books. She doesn't go to school. She'd be the perfect clown. He is the perfect clown. She is the perfect clown. I think she got candy and a lemonade from the Israelis and sent it back home to mommy again yesterday.
I misheard you. I thought you said he.
He? Oh, you wish. Did you hear that mass threw all the queers off the boats? They weren't allowed to go on the flotilla?
Yeah, I heard that. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yes.
There were 500 people on 44 boats or something. I don't know. I don't care about the exact details of this day. And all the queers were thrown off the boats because queers for Palestine weren't welcome to Palestine. Because if they did go to Palestine, they would be executed.
Douglas Murray put that best. Queers for Palestine is a little like chickens for KFC.
Exactly. Blindly. Put it mildly. So here's the thing. Politics is dead. What we're doing, though, we're dealing with politics today, and I do work with politicians. I do go to Brussels. We're working with how do you sort of unwind it carefully so we don't move straight into an enemy. You know, for all I care, pay less tax is my motto.
Yeah, opt out.
Because the less tax you pay, the less they can grow, or they can't grow unless you feed them. And the best thing you can do is to put these institutions at war with one another over the small resources they have.
And the best way to do that is the Bitcoin circular economies. Like I said, just do things with your friends and don't let anyone know that you're doing them. Who's going to stop you from? And what it is just humans cooperating. And what's actually, why is that criminalized? I never understood that. So that's why I don't understand taxes at all. It's like, why are you punishing us doing productive stuff together? It makes absolutely no sense.
Because I'm a criminal, as Karl Marx said. I'm a thief. I steal your money from you. It's called taxes. And we pretend it's a nice thing that I'm doing to you.
Did Marx say this?
And then every 4 years we have an election, I pretend I give you gifts back, which is like only a small part of what I just stole from you. It's called politics.
Are you sure you didn't pick up a Bastiat book and not Marx?
You don't like that I mention Marx when he says right things?
No, I'd like to pick your brain on
Marxist or anything like that at all, Knut. I'm perfectly happy with you not being...
No, I'm not. But you claimed that you were libertarian Marxist, so that's why I'm picking your brain on.
I think it was Brendan Neal from Spiked Online, my dear friend, and I sat in London getting really drunk a few years ago, and we just looked at each other and said, I think we agree on absolutely everything. And Brendan said, yeah, we agree on absolutely everything, Bart. Okay. So you're running Spiked Online here, and I'm running my podcast as Scandinavia. So we have to have a name, a label for our ideological conviction. And then we looked at each other and we said, I think we're thinking the same thing. We're probably the first two Marxist libertarians. Or that's the one. That's the one.
There's another confused subgroup of libertarians called libertarian socialists. I've had them on the pod too. Anyway, Bastiat lived around the same time as Marx. What are your thoughts on him?
No, tell me your thoughts on him. Let's move it over to your perspective here.
Yeah, I love him. Like
you're his advocate. I was Karl Marx advocate. You're Bastiat's
Bastiat's advocate. He's the first one that pointed out sort of that the things that you do not see. So and the broken window fallacy is his most important, most famous anecdote, I guess. And it's like this notion that spending money, government spending, is good for the economy somehow. It's basically the same as saying as throwing a brick through a window is good for the economy because you give the window maker work and therefore he can make money and therefore it's good for society. And the flaw is, of course, that you don't follow the entirety of the production. So like there's always, with a loss comes always, there's always something that someone needs to give up. So the people the person living in the house will have to pay for the new window, meaning that he has to exclude something else he could have done with that money. And this is what Bastiat pointed out. He pointed out that it's reminds me of the what about the roads question, because like who should make the roads if not the government? Well, we don't know how much better roads could have been if they have been privatized, all of them. Like we don't have that knowledge because we only see the world we live in, the timeline we live in. We don't see the alternative timelines that never happened in this reality. So we don't know if we would have been better or worse off. We don't know if Judeo-Christian values laid the foundation for the Enlightenment, or if we would have reached it faster if those things hadn't been around. Like, we can never know that. And that's like my takeaway of Bastiat, like the most important thing. That's like pointing out the unseen.
What do you think happens though if you get what Spengler here would call decadent consumption at the end of the day? So I agree with you. The ironic thing is that if you go to war, the economy increases. So if economic growth is all you're concerned with, then just go to war.
GDP
Israel's
is
and
a
Russia's
bullshit.
economies are doing just fine at the moment because they're both at war and they're going towards the 50% of GDP.
GDP is a bullshit metric. It's a very dishonest metric because it measures nothing about human progress. Like if you have deflationary money or absolutely finite money, then that accurately reflects the deflationary nature of the free market, meaning that all prices should drop at all time, and they do if you denominate in Bitcoin. So you can actually see that, and it's better for everyone because everyone gets richer and richer over time. But their urge to overconsume goes away because you get closer to this philosophical insight, that which you can do without you own, because you don't want to spend your money.
That's why I say Bitcoin is a spiritual revolution, and don't look at economic growth figures when you do Bitcoin, because the whole trick of doing economic growth is basically just, I throw a rock through your window and therefore economic growth because you got to fix the window.
Yeah.
But the thing though is, it's a good argument though coming from a Spenglerian point of view. If I'm a bit devil's advocate here.
Please.
What happens though is that if we are economically successful, we do well, and we do produce a lot of things, and we get into what you would call decadent consumerism. Do you blame decadent consumerism only on the fact that there's an inflationary pressure? You need to get rid of the money as quickly as possible if you have the money?
Yeah, I blame most of it.
Is that for you the main argument against the inflationary pressure of fiat currencies, that it has that sort of negative spiritual effect on people? Because Spengler is interested in the question, how do you maintain or enhance spirituality in the people? How do you get a soul? And I find the question philosophically, of course, very...
Consumerism is absolutely a product of fiat currencies and inflationary currency. If your currency loses value over time, if you know that stuff is getting more expensive, or at least it's not getting cheaper, then you will spend more. If you know that if you wait, you will get more later, then that's the Stanford marshmallow experiment. Is the low time preference. Like low time preference is civilization. If you can delay gratification, you can reap a bigger reward in the future. And this is
that's a theory of investment. Period. That's what.
Yeah, and you heard about
the
Stanford marshmallow experiment, right? This is an experiment carried out in the 70s, where they gave kids a marshmallow and they told them, like, if you wait for 10 minutes, you'll get 2 marshmallows. And the kids who couldn't wait but ate the thing, they followed them, and they studied these kids for like 40 years. And the kids that could delay gratification did better in almost all success metrics 40 years later down the line. Like,
yeah.
And it's
actually, that's a very good example here of the spirituality of Bitcoin that I want to stay with. My problem dealing with young men in the men's movement that I work with a lot, and this is going to be part of the next book, is that I propose something called essentialism, replacing capitalism, the dominant mode, over the past 25 years. And I'm more and more seeing what that means. The reason I haven't written an explicit book on essentialism is because it's been very, very hard to define it and nail it. Because people tend to think of capital, then they think of data, and they think data is similar to capital, and data takes over the world because capital is a form of data all of a sudden. No. Attention is dealing with human beings or what human beings prioritize. What they have to prioritize and what they want to prioritize in a world where they can choose. So that's what people do at the end of it. Even under dictatorship, they choose. So the question is then, the positive thing with Bitcoin, that it pays off to sit on the money and wait until you really have something you want to spend it on rather than overconsume, which I think is a deep spiritual value and a great possible bit. I agree with you. This is profound, right? So we have the overconsumption, the problem with decadent consumption, as Spengler would say. Spengler would probably agree, and he would probably love Bitcoin. So it makes sense if you're a Spenglerian. So the question is then, if you go on social media, go online today, you turn on your smartphone, you turn on your laptop, you have an addiction problem because you spend way too much time on it and you're not doing what you're supposed to do. I mean, even instead of planning in the morning how you're going to spend your day on the smartphone, the laptop during the day, you're not going to spend it that way anyway. You're going to be a fucking TikTok or porn addict or whatever, and you're not going to spend it on learning new things, which is probably what you wanted to do, or making new friends. So here's the trick. The word for not being able to control it is called sensation. And the word for being able to control it over time is called attention. That means that Bitcoin is different from the fiat currencies. So the regular currency with deflationary pressure promotes sensations. They promote sensationalism. They promote addiction to sensations. What Bitcoin does is that it actively, explicitly promotes attention over sensation, meaning that, no, I want to know the value of this that I'm experiencing right now over time. Is this what I'm experiencing right now something that has value for me over time? There's a value for my family and friends over time. Not now, as it is a sensation that I was supposed to react on and then pass on to somebody else, like a sensation being passed on in an echo chamber into pure emptiness.
But that's exactly what the difference between high time preference and low time preference is. Yeah. And that's what all the Bitcoiners experience. All the people who go through this journey experience the same thing. They go from
you find it as a spiritual discovery.
Some do. So a lot of them, a lot of Bitcoiners do.
I would insist that it is. It's a spiritual.
I wouldn't choose that word myself, but I would say that it has had a profound impact on how I view the world. And it has changed my mind on not only religions and my... I now view, like, I was a militant atheist 15 years ago. Now I view like statism as probably the worst religion. So I'm still against that, but I have nothing against spirituality, never did. But I wouldn't choose that word. I would say it has changed my mind on how much I think my attitude towards the world actually influences the world. And this, we can go into quantum mechanics.
I stand corrected in a certain way, because when I was on the panel in Helsinki, I pointed out that formally, Bitcoin is new, and is not the new paradigm, because Bitcoin is the completion of capitalism. It's perfect like that. Oh, wait a second. But for us as human beings, for my soul, for your spirituality or whatever, Bitcoin is the beginning of the new. Because then Bitcoin is definitely post-capitalist, it's on the side of potentialism. And we could even start defining and unrolling potentialism as a new paradigm based on Bitcoin.
I'm gonna use the old communist trope and say that wasn't real capitalism, because I truly believe we've never had real capitalism since we've always had.
That's what I said on the panel in Helsinki. And I said, okay, so let's start here and say, what has Bitcoin actually already done? Yeah. What is obvious that it's doing? The genie's out of the bottle, is already happening. None of us can control it. We're just sitting on the side, seeing it all out.
You can't have pure capitalism and a state existing at the same time. So if you extrapolate that thought as far as possible into the future, if everyone is actually taking responsibility for their own stuff, not only are they free with their own stuff, they're actually taking responsibility for it. And there's no use in attacking them because it's not profitable to aggress against people anymore. So though I too, I like, I'm not against collective payment of things, like, but that's called insurance or whatever. There's a lot of things we can do stuff together. I just want to take away the involuntary part. Like I just want to take away the coercion from the equation, because that's what, in my opinion, always snowballs into something, into a beast it should have never been. Because it skews with the incentives. Once you can enrich yourself, not by providing value to your fellow man, but by gaming politics, then the incentive is for you once you're already drinking blood from that system, your incentive as that kind of vampire is to live forever and grow bigger if you're an institution. Do you follow me here?
Yeah, sure. I think we just marry our vocabularies here, because where I'm coming from, going into post-capitalism with essentialism as the new dominant mode, meaning that what pays off in the long run is the long run perspective. Yeah. There's even a new word we invented for it. We were sitting here last week over dinner with a few friends here. So they sort of call it, what do we do? Because we can't call it an economics of time. We can't call it an economics of the calendar or anything like that. Although people would like to think of it that way. Like, if I start planning my life and I expect to die one day, and until the day I don't, I'm going to live fully, and somebody is going to survive me, they're going to inherit me. They're also part of the equation. If I take all these things into what's called death as the absolute, as a formula, right? If I take that in as a formula, then I start valuing things long-term in a way I wouldn't do, because capitalist society and the online world and social media are trying to sensationalize everything to get my attention. But they mean attention as sensation, not attention like long-term what I give my attention to. So I can deny them my attention, put attention over to something long-term. Then we already have a force for good here coming from the new power as a ready to sell. And that is Bitcoin. And you should only, all Bitcoin should claim this is a spiritual revolution. It makes much more sense to.
Yeah, but many Bitcoiners do. I mean, more do than don't, I'd say, and say that it's actually a spiritual thing. I just personally like using other words because I'm targeting another audience, I guess.
You can use the word attentionalist if you want to. And here's the new one. Here's the new word we had to invent. What does it mean if I ask a friend to help me organize my life until the day I die and beyond? What does that mean? What does it mean to ask somebody to help me focus on the right things and ignore the things I should ignore? Oh, what would that be? Well, we call it chronomics.
Chronomics, yeah.
Is it chronomic a great word?
But this is why I prefer to call I'm a
chronomist. I help people organize their lives until the day they die. What are going to be your priorities, darling?
And I'm an economist.
You're an economist. You're
economist. I'm
economist.
Economics is the science, right?
Okay, economy. Well, what do you mean with the E? You added the E. It's on the word or something.
No, economy. Like, there's a play on words.
It's a joke.
Is it really?
Yes.
Because here's the thing.
Words. Formally, the word originally is chronology. You know what chronology is? Something happens.
Chronos, time, all that.
Okay.
Yep.
If you organize what's chronological, so you can switch the chronology around, it's no longer a chronology, it's a chrononomy. Chrononomy is a very clumsy word.
I love it, though.
Anders Sandberg, the Oxford professor, was involved in this conversation. He's a great friend of ours in the Prosperian and all that shit. And Sandberg just said, no, chronomics, don't ever have any more syllables in any word, whatever, that you don't have to have there, even in the English language. No. So even if chrononomy is the correct word, you have to bit that chronomy or chronomics are better words, easier to use.
Yeah. The thing I was getting at with the many Bitcoiners, including me, call the Bitcoin blockchain the time chain instead of just a blockchain. And it serves two purposes. It separates Bitcoin from the other shit. And also, it's actually the finite nature of it makes it the only perfect representation of the finiteness of a human life. it is actually you're only going to live X amount of blocks.
Who are these guys? I missed them. Who are these guys? The time
you should look up GG and you should look up Tomer Strawlight.
Tell us, because all the guys that are following this conversation are surely interested. I'm going to take my notebook out because it's getting so good. I got to go
look up an article by GG called "Bitcoin is Time." It's one of my favorites.
Bitcoin is time.
Yeah. So the thing is, it's definitely representing. I can recommend having a near-death experience. Well, I wouldn't recommend it, but when you have one,
I did have one.
Yeah, and so did I. I didn't do psychedelics. I was in the middle of the ocean, but anyway, the thing is, it's only when you realize that what death implies that you start to actually value your life, right?
Yes.
So I think the thing that gives the why we act at all requires us to have a finite life, which is one of the reasons I don't believe in God, because I think an omnipotent being would never have the incentive to do anything because they could postpone everything forever.
Well, God, it would be horrible. It would be horrible. If I have to choose between heaven and hell, I choose hell right away because at least the nicer people are there.
Yes, and the music is better. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can die. God.
Finally. No, but so I very much believe that gives us value. And what you say about attention and what was the other word?
Attentionalism. Attentionalism should be used as a Marxist. I use attentivism as opposed to capitalism.
But you said another word that for this short-term attention span, just TikTok, blah, blah, blah. Sensational. Yeah.
It's very easy to understand that if you talk about sensations, that people say addiction to sensations. Yes. You can never be addicted to attention.
Yeah.
You can never be addicted to life.
No.
You can only be addicted to sensations. And that's the drinking, taking the drugs, sex addiction. All addictions are addictions to sensation. So you got to get off the sensation hook, meaning all misuses of sensations are the same. All addictions are the same. So you can get out of the addiction world by just recognizing, I'm not going to buy the sensations anymore. I'm sick and tired of it. Great. If you get off the sensation, you start thinking about a full life, you're going to live a full life, a whole life.
Yeah.
You start thinking about life that way. And you also think people are going to inherit whatever you created during your life. So you also care about beyond life. You care beyond that. If you care about, that's called transcendence, by the way. If you care about those things, then suddenly, why are you wasting your life on this and this? And why are you doing so little of this and this and this that are actually incredibly valuable things you're doing that you really appreciate? And suddenly you start changing your life accordingly. And you get all the other values coming out of that. That's what I call the chronomic. Chronomic. I'm going to learn the word myself. Chronomic life perspective. Chronomic life perspective.
No, but you wouldn't believe how many Bitcoiners have had exactly that journey. Like it's Yoni, for instance, like our mutual friend Yoni.
Yoni Appelberg, check him out. Great guy, brilliant stuff on YouTube. Great guy.
And a great friend and one of the loveliest human beings on the planet. Like he had that journey, and so many others did. Like this is exactly what we're talking about. We stop doing the sensations and do the attention. I love that framing because and there are very practical, like real world things that happen in the line of this. So for instance, Nostr is not based on ads, makes it more attention based than sensation based.
Ads will go when sensations are out because ads are built only on sensations, nothing else. They have no value.
No, the other algorithms that want to keep your attention with sensations all the time, what they really want to do is for you to flip to the next one so that you sooner or later see an ad and buy some shit, because that's what finances them, right?
They want to turn you into an addict. That's exactly what they do.
On Nostr, you'd have none of that because what you're incentivized instead to zap, meaning sending a micropayment to whatever post you like. So whoever gets the attention is whoever's more appreciated by the community, literally, through actual monetary value, which is a fantastic model. And musicians, I've seen posts by musicians on Nostr that all of a sudden they're making money again because there's no middleman. People can appreciate them directly. And they don't even have to sell their music. They just get appreciated through
You have no
sats.
idea what communist you are right now, but I won't tell anybody. I'm not going to tell you.
No, but I think that
and I mean this in the best possible sense.
What you describe as communism, I would call functioning capitalism.
That was Marx's idea. That was Marx's idea all along. Anyway, yeah. No, but this is great stuff. I mean, the Bitcoin is time perspective, because what happened with the internet revolution, this is what's philosophically incredibly interesting, is that space more or less has disappeared. And Marshall McLuhan, who was nothing but a media theorist in the 20th century, but we all read him as a great philosopher today. Like, in hindsight, Nietzsche wasn't a philosopher, Darwin wasn't a philosopher, Freud wasn't a philosopher, and certainly not McLuhan. But in hindsight, these are the philosophers. The people who claim to be philosophers when they live are usually not the ones who regard as philosophers 50 years later, because they weren't original enough. McLuhan understood that medial communication is power, and medial communication what human beings deal with, and we're communicative beings. That's what we are. And he got it, and he realized that the revolution started with the telegraph. You could be in New York or London. Within seconds, somebody in New York would be informed about something that just happened in London. Prior to the telegraph, that was unheard of. The only way to find out what happened in New York was that somebody put themselves on a boat and went on a boat from New York to London. And then when they come to London, they gave some kind of gossipy version, incorrect version of what happened in New York. And that was about the truest version of events you could have, because space was incredibly limiting for people. You were stuck where you were. Roads were terrible. Except for the seas and the waters, there was hardly anywhere you could travel. We didn't have any cars. We didn't have any trains yet. None of that shit happened. All of these things happened in the last 200 years. So we've communicated and become totally different beings from what we were. And because we can read, write, and count, and we're prepared because the printing press, these communication tools, and the way we can travel around the world, enhanced the world enormously for us, and became globalized because of it. Now, here's the trick, though. Once that happened, once people realized that we got a telegraph and actually information can travel from one part of the world to the other within seconds, then you got the telephone, then you got the fax machine, you got the internet, you got television, you got radio, you got all these different electronic media. All of these things together combined that in the late 1980s, you could clearly see that with the internet, space had disappeared.
Yep.
You could talk at virtually no cost at all to anybody, even with fiat currencies. You can literally today talk to anybody in the world in no time at all and have a conversation with for as long as you like, no cost. That means space disappears. And if you still want to move your body physically from one territory to the next, maybe to escape the tax authority or something like that, it's a good excuse to travel. But you want to move your body from one place to the next, you can still travel anywhere in the world at a, an affordable flight ticket for within 24 hours. No problems. So space has disappeared. That means for human beings being spatio-temporal, meaning that if space disappears, time becomes more important than ever.
Yep.
What you do with your life is more important than ever. Even if we've been chronomic before in history, even if our chronomic ideas before in history, even if Hegel in the early 1800s wrote that philosophy has to start with death, and it'll start with the fact that I as a philosopher will die one day, and philosophy is basically the art of learning how to die with grace. If you start with that position, you become a great thinker like Hegel. You think about what human beings are concerned with. So I think chronomics is just a new word we're adding to something that has been there all along, but now comes to the forefront, big time. And I agree with you. If Bitcoin is time, then Bitcoin is philosophically and spiritually way more interesting than most people have assumed.
It is, and Bitcoin is time. And this is the funny thing about that. It's like that when it was bootstrapped and the parameters were set in stone, it was made so that the network, the difficulty adjusts every 2 weeks when you're mining, meaning that if more miners come online, it becomes harder to mine to ensure that the average time between each block is 10 minutes. And so the 2 weeks decides the 10 minutes, but then again also the 10 minutes decides what the 2 weeks are. So there's this wonderful little time loop in the thing in how it's governed. Because the thing that makes sure that the 2 weeks makes sure that the 10 minutes are 10, and the 10 minutes make sure that they make sure that the 2 weeks are 2 weeks. But we don't count it like that in Bitcoin. We just measure block time. So it's not actually 2 weeks. It's how many blocks is it? This escapes my mind. 2000. No, well, I should know this. 2016 blocks. So that's where it adjusts. And then that's what ensures that's what separates it from gold, by the way. Because if gold goes up in value, more gold miners come online and we find more gold. If Bitcoin goes up in value, more Bitcoin miners come online, but we don't find more Bitcoin because it adjusts to that. And I've never met a person that can accurately describe the difficulty adjustment algorithm who is against Bitcoin. Because once you see what that is, once you see it for what it is, you cannot be like you. That's the light bulb thing to understand. So Bitcoin is time is really, and just the fact that its finite nature makes it the perfect representation of the finite nature of your time on this earth. I think that is so poetic and so beautiful, and it's like changes everything.
Knut, I can't stop talking with you.
Likewise, Alexander.
This is beautiful, but I think that was such a great liner to finish it off with. All I can say back to you is that in the future, humanity will regard the abolition of advertising as an even greater achievement than the abolition of slavery.
It's the same thing. It's just that we finally put it up.
It is worse than slavery. Advertising is worse. Yeah. That means if you're educating yourself to become an advertiser in 2025, it's a bit like educating yourself to be slave owner in 1925. You're just too late to the game.
Yeah. And that reminds me of public service media outlets that in Sweden, the advertising is forbidden on the natural TV channels. But that's so oxymoronic, because since it's financed by one institution, it's all advertising. It's propaganda.
All it's not about government advertising.
There's nothing but advertising.
Yes, exactly what it is. Yeah,
it's just a monopoly.
Sweden is fascinating in the way it is one of the world's oldest democracies, but it's never been a democracy.
No.
Anyway, we can talk about that a lot, and we can have many conversations. But I'd love to come back to you, and I love being on the show. I love doing this work with you. Yeah. For me, this was a profound experience today. I'm going to keep on working on the Bitcoin.
Likewise, and right back at you.
I knew about it. I knew it was there. But what Bitcoin can add to the theory of the shift from capitalism to capitalism is incredibly valuable.
Yeah. Dergigi.com. That's where you find Gigi's articles, if they're still there at the same website. I think they're there. It's a very profound thinker and a good friend.
Weeks time again, so
he knows
I'm going to talk to Joni about this as well. He should be on the show too.
Joni's talk was excellent in Finland, by the way. Did you see Joni's talk on that side station? Yeah. It was great. Yeah,
of course.
Wonderful. Yeah. Anyway, Alexander, always a fantastic pleasure to see you. I always learn something new, words and everything. And I hope to see you again in the flesh once again soon.
I'm a closet Bitcoiner. I'm coming out. I'm coming out.
Good.
Big love.
Big love. This has been the Bitcoin Infinity Show. Brush your damn teeth and don't miss the Academy, and read Alexander's books and mine. Goodbye.